Hey everybody, it is Dr. Leith, and today I'm going to go over mental status exams, biopsychosocials, and initial intakes. And you'll see that a lot of this kind of intertwines. They all relate to one another. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you heard some of this and said, oh, well, that's what I was already planning on doing. And that's great. These are necessary components to doing counseling. So, we are definitely pivoting out of psychometrics and test creation and instrument stuff, and now we're getting into the clinical aspect of assessment. So this should be good and exciting. I think if you found the previous stuff or the things that we've covered thus far a little more technical and a little more dry, then this will be a welcome change as we go into things that you can apply, that you are going to do as you go into practicum, internship, after graduation when you're working with real people. In fact, with some of these things, go ahead and talk to your friends and family. Get used to observing them and making mental notes. So let's start with mental status exams. So a couple questions. If we were meeting live, these are things that I would ask you, and you all would have a healthy, robust discussion and come up with incredible answers. What is the mental status exam? Well, that's a process by which we, clinicians, are determining any symptoms, strengths, opportunities, threats to our clients and our work with them. We're checking to see their orientation. Are they grounded in reality? Resilience, all of that really good stuff, all that clinical stuff. When does it start? Well, it's a fun question. A lot of you are probably thinking in your first session, and that is true. But it actually starts as soon as the appointment is made, right? So, for example, somebody calls you up, they call your private practice number, or they call your agency, and they start screaming into the phone, I want an appointment, I can't take this kid anymore. That says a lot, doesn't it? If someone calls up and they say, "Hi, yes, my name's Chris, and I mean it's okay if you can't, but do you think maybe I could get an appointment?" If someone calls up and they say, "I need to be seen right now, or I'll kill myself," right? If someone calls up and says, "Hey, I'm having a hard time. I have tried this, that, and the other thing, and I just don't know what else to do, and I think it's time I try counseling," right? All of those things, each of those conversations is giving you a lot of really good information about your client, right? Now, could it be contextual? Absolutely, everything can be contextual. But at first, you're kind of making a note, okay, this person sounds intense, this person sounds very frustrated, this person I could barely hear them on the phone. When do you think it ends? Great answer. It does not, right? We're always kind of going. Now, we make an initial assessment when they come in, hence the term initial intake. And you are always kind of going along with it, especially in those first few sessions where you're getting to know your client. But then afterwards, like when you have clients for months, if not longer, then not a whole lot changes. But at first, you're still establishing that baseline, and a mental status exam helps with that. And what do you think the general components are? Now, a few of you are thinking, oh, well, I've heard about appearance, how they talk, eye contact, body language. Those are all correct. Those are pieces of it. But you're going to see now, and if you review the article in this module as well as the templates I put up just to kind of get an idea, you'll see that there's a lot of pieces to it. So first we start with appearance, as you accurately guessed. So you're looking at things like posture, right? Are they folded in on themselves? Are their arms crossed? Are they sitting very rigid? Eye contact, is it darting? Do they avoid it? Is it appropriate? Are they staring at you deep into your soul? Dress, right? And for dress, we're really just kind of looking at something like, are they dressed appropriately given the context? So, here in Texas or in San Antonio, we get incredibly hot and humid summers, right? if someone came to your appointment dressed wearing a sweater and sweatpants, and they had a duster on, right? They're dressed very warm. It raises an eyebrow for you. Now, you might be thinking, especially for things like eye contact and dress, well, those could be culture, Dr. Lathan. Absolutely right. All we're doing right now is this is the first time we're meeting somebody. And so we look at that and we are considering the role of culture and context as well. Grooming, are they put together? Are they particular with their grooming? Are they disheveled? Are they dirty? Right? And again, you might be saying, but that could be a function of socioeconomic status, living situations. If it's children, then parenting. Absolutely. That's part of this process, getting that information. And observing these things makes you ask those questions. What are things like at home? Is this a culturally sanctioned behavior or appearance? Is there a context to it? Right? So we're noting this and saying, yes, it's not common, but just because it's not common doesn't mean it's pathological either, right? So now we're left with tell me about your culture and things like that. Their behavior. What are they physically doing in session? Right? Are they pacing around? And I've had that happen. It could be that someone, usually when I've seen it, the person is like really amped up, right? So I had a young guy come in, and he and his girlfriend were on the outs, and he was so nervous that they're gonna break up. I bet she's already started like dating other people, and he is just, I'm gonna lose her. And so he couldn't really sit still, right? But we would expect in counseling, without pathology and without context, a person sits down and things like that. But pacing around, are they fidgeting? Are they kicking their legs? Those sort of telltale signs. What are they doing with things like their phone? Right? I had a guy that I worked with who he would almost compulsively check his phone. It was never more than a minute or two without looking. And so on one hand, it's maybe he was nervous, or was this a compulsion? In his case, what it was this was right when, around the time that Amazon opened their warehouse near San Antonio, and then they started doing Prime Now. And that's how he made his money, being one of the delivery people for them. And it was kind of a first come, first serve. You had to be on this app signing up for things, and he was struggling financially. So while we're sitting in session, it was a lot of him looking down, right? Now, there's the context. It wasn't anything pathological. However, it was still disruptive for the session, so it is worth noting. And of course, over time, as it settled down and he found a rhythm, it kind of went away. Are they looking around nervously? Are they kind of rifling through things? But what are they doing in session? Their motor activity. So things that are leaning more towards involuntary. So are they twitching? Is there a tick? Is there anything abnormal? Does it seem driven, like rocking, right? Like I'm choosing to rock, or I shouldn't say rocking is probably not the best example. Is it driven like I'm choosing to do this, like I keep flexing my wrists, I keep opening and closing my hand? Is it unconscious, such as rocking? Here we go, right? Is it a twitch like with the smile? Tardive dyskinesia, which you probably see commercials for, which is a side effect of medications, specifically antipsychotics, right? So a good example of this is Heath Ledger's Joker in whichever Batman movie that was, The Dark Knight. And so he's always kind of messing with his lips. He's sticking his tongue out. And so we see this very commonly with individuals who maybe had schizophrenia, for example, and they take the medication. And so there's kind of an involuntary twitching of the mouth and face, a very strong sense of cotton mouth. But is that there? And again, these things could be medically related. It could be a tic disorder, right? Catatonic movements, right? So does it look like they're resisting against gravity, right? They're fighting against a force. Are they just kind of not moving at all, like a mannequin, right? So things that are out of the ordinary. Their orientation. So this is stuff that you are figuring out as you talk to them. So these are kind of contingent on the information that they give you. So personal identity. Do they know who they are, right? My name is Chris Lath. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Counseling at the University of Texas at San Antonio, et cetera, et cetera. And that would also include their history. Do they have an accurate depiction of their family history, right? My parents are so-and-so and so-and-so, and my sibling is this person. Do they know where they are, location, time, the year, right? And this is really a really important question. And again, there can be reasons that are non-clinical, non-pathological for this, but circumstances, right? Do they know why they're here? Do they know why they're coming to counseling? And so on the very, very extreme, definitely clinical end, it's, you are the person that's going to determine if I go to heaven or hell, right? So there's something kind of delusional there, all the way to the other end, which is, I don't know what the big deal is. Everybody keeps telling me I've got a problem, so I figured I'd just come, but they're the problem, right? So not understanding the circumstance. I don't know what I did or what's wrong with what I did. And that's good clinical information for you, because that definitely adjusts how you're going to work with this person. How is their attitude? Right? Are they giving you attitude? Are they giving you lip? Right? Are they very guarded? Right? So it's kind of like pulling teeth to get information. And of course, if so, why? Is it maybe a really sensitive topic for them? Are there some cultural considerations, such as, I'll be very stereotypical example, talking about sex-related issues. For me, I'm a guy counselor. If I'm working with a female client and the topic of sex comes up because maybe there was a traumatic event or something like that, and there's some discomfort talking about that with me, could it be that it was a traumatic event and the person just doesn't want to talk about it? Is it that they've been burned in the past, right? And I see that a lot. I worked with university students, and I would get a lot of reticence to work with me because in the past, previous counselors would talk to them, and you can trust me, you can tell me anything. Building rapport, I don't doubt that, well-intentioned. And then the counselor, of course, rightfully or wrongfully, wound up telling parents what was said in session. And of course, different topic for a different day. Parents have the right to know what a child says in session and things like that. But then what happens is that child feels very betrayed. And so then as adults, they come in saying, I don't know if I want to tell you that because my previous counselor went and told my guardians or my parents or the principal what I was talking about, even though they said that they wouldn't, right? So, who knows, right? You'd have to be there. Could it have been that the client is mistaken with their memory of the situation? Could it have been, the developmental understanding of it? And again, like all their professions, counselors make mistakes too. Did the counselor make a promise that he or she couldn't keep, right? Tell me anything, right? Knowing full well that there are certain things that I have to tell the parents and setting a stage up. So now when they come to counseling, they're maybe a little more suspicious. On the more clinical end, is it, you're going to feed this information to the machine and what's going to happen? Are they open, right? Are they articulate with their response and they're sharing it with you? Yeah, I can tell because I know that, yes, I'm uncomfortable talking about it, but I know it's for the better good. Are they very open? And I want you to think about that for a second, because our profession and our work with clients is definitely contingent on a certain degree of openness. What does it mean if someone is very, very open, if anything? Well, there can be kind of an indication that if this person very freely shares this information without any indication that maybe it is sensitive information, or maybe it's a taboo topic, such as what if someone is very freely discussing how they don't like minorities or sexual minorities, right? They're very clearly, very blatantly, very obviously discussing these things without thinking at all like, hey, this, most of the time if somebody hears this sort of thing, the other person has a reaction. So being very open. You ask a question and you get, while related information, very detailed or graphic information, right? And the reason that I note this is that if they're this way with me, there's a very good chance that they're probably that way in their real life. Me, right? Speech and language. So how they're communicating to you. In this, we would also note things like, what is their primary language? What is the language that is spoken at home? Is there a language barrier between me and them, right? And that can kind of be subverted if I'm fluent in the other language, right? But their rate, is it very slow? I went to the store and it was so crowded. Is it very, very fast, as though they're being pressured to get it out? The volume, right? Are they yelling? Is it normal? Is it quiet? I never had anybody that, like, I've had people who, they're naturally louder with their voice, but not in any, like, interesting capacity. They were just maybe a little bit louder. I have had a few clients who are so quiet that I can barely hear them. I've had a client who in one of my offices, look at me, a big shot. I have had multiple offices. I had an air conditioner there. It was one of those like single unit deals. And this person was so quiet, and I would keep getting closer to the point where, like, surely she has to be uncomfortable with me getting any closer. I'm uncomfortable moving any closer. Can't hear. You can only ask, what was that? So many times before you start feeling self-conscious. So I had to turn off the air conditioner, and I could still barely hear, and it's sort of like, well, what's going on? Long story short, she just had a lifetime of very intrusive family members and had quickly adapted to being very low-key, speaking very low so people can't hear her, and that then transmits through other places in her life, including with counseling. The amount, are they articulate? Are they giving you the bare minimum information? Are they articulate with what they're saying? And that can be a function of development, right? It can also be a function of culture. I think of, with men, it can be difficult to use different expressions for emotion. It could be that there's not, the phrase, there's not a word for it in English. It could be that they think less is more, or maybe they're just kind of feeling out what do I want to say? How do I feel? Mood and affect. So mood is how they're feeling, right? This is what they're saying. I feel sad, I feel down, I feel happy, I feel angry. And affect is what we are observing. And so under most circumstances, mood and affect are going to reasonably match. The person says, I'm really sad, and we see them, and we would describe them as maybe very sullen. Their head is down, there's crying. They say they're angry. We see maybe a quicker rate of speech. We hear more descriptive language, things like that. When someone says, "No, everything's fine. I'm happy. I'm great. I'm having a great day," but they're crying. I'm. This is the worst day of my life. I had to go to a funeral, and they're laughing as they're saying it. And again, just as a reminder, there can be very valid non-pathological reasons for that. But then that's where we circle back. We note that there's a difference between these two. And we might say something like, well, you're telling me how great everything is and this you're so happy, and here you are crying. Tell me what's going on. All right? Or reverse, You're saying, here you are saying you're laughing, smile on your face, everything's on point. Say on fleek if you want to sound cool. And at the same time, you're telling me how unhappy you are. Help me understand that difference. And of course, most of the time you'll get, this is how I've always been, or this is a defense mechanism and things like that. But we're noting, does their affect and mood match? I almost said Aflac. Thoughts and perceptions. So now we're definitely kind of like over here, definitely a more clinical issue. Thoughts, right? So association, do they have coherent thoughts? And this manifests through their responses to your question. So when you're saying stuff like, tell me about mom and dad, and they start talking about my roommates, the people I grew up with, is it coherent, right? Well, think of child logic or child storytelling, right? They're telling you as best they can, but it's not necessarily coherent, right? So you say, tell me about college. What was college life like for you? Well, there was, a party, and then I graduated, and jobs, right? What does that mean? Logic. So the reverse of this would be magical thinking, right? Do they understand cause and effect? Does one thing lead to another? Their stream of thoughts, are they staying on point with you? Like, meaning we're staying on topic, or is it just kind of a steady stream of whatever thoughts are coming to mind? Perception is how they view the world, right? So are they having hallucinations, right? Are they having false sensory experiences, such as seeing things that aren't really there, or that other people can't see? And that would include the other senses as well, right? Illusions. I think I see something. I walk up to examine it, and it's not there. I thought I saw it, and I guess it wasn't there. Depersonalization and derealization, right? So depersonalization, feeling as though I have an out-of-body experience, or I have no control over my body. Derealization is, this is not happening, this is a dream, this is a fantasy, and I just feel like none of this is real. You see this a lot with traumatic events. Their thought process, are they going on a lot of tangents? Are they bouncing from topic to topic? Is it circumstantial thoughts? Like, are they just kind of pulling different details based on what they're talking about? Word salad, right? They're just saying a bunch of words. So this would definitely probably be in line with, something more clinical, right? But somebody just says, dog ear, banana patch. We don't know what that means. Neologisms, so made up words, right? So this can also be a function of development, right? So think of little kids, right? If you're working with a child and they say something like, well, I tried to get my toy out from under the couch, but I couldn't because it was too hurty, instead of being able to say it was too painful, right? So again, there could be different reasons for this: medication, personality, right? So I want to avoid, and I have a bad habit of, when I teach this stuff, kind of giving a lot of clinical examples. There can be non-clinical reasons for each of these. Now the thought content. So this is why y'all got in the game to begin with, right? What are they thinking about? Now, these are some of the main ones, right? So this is all stuff that you would say, okay, I got to remember that, and I need to write it down. Are they having thoughts of suicide? And with that, and we go over this in much greater detail later in the semester, how often? How intense are those thoughts? Do they have a plan? Things like that. Homicide, same questions. Ruminations, right? Are they dwelling? I can't stop replaying that. Obsessions. What other types of ideation? And again, not always clinical, right? I can't stop thinking, like being obsessed with or always thinking about this relationship I was in that was really unhealthy. Or I can't stop thinking about what someone said to me and things like that. But this is the content. And I guess by extension you would be kind of examining any cognitive distortions. Everybody hates me. Nobody supports me, right? Black and white thinking, jumping to conclusions. You know the deal from your CBT and theories class. Decision making. I love this topic. I love decision making with clients, and it's really important too. So, insight about themselves, and this is awareness, right? Are they aware of the problem, right? And again, this would scale up with age and development, because little kids, they might say, well, what's the big deal, right? Like, I spent $200 on in-app purchases and microtransactions, right? Not aware of like why mom and dad are kind of like, whoa, this is like the third or fourth time this kid has done it, right? Are they aware of the illness? So think of addiction, right? I don't have a problem, you're the problem. Circumstances, are they aware? Like, so again, I worked with college students. Are they really understanding the seriousness of the situation? Do you really understand you're going to get kicked out of school? You're going to fail. Do they understand the reasons for the visit? Judgment, and this is where you're kind of working with them. This might be what you focus on in session, right? The goals for counseling. How do they make decisions? And are they able to make good, healthy decisions? So, somebody gets caught in a dorm, like smoking pot and drinking, and they're underage, and so, okay, everybody makes mistakes. Wrong place, wrong time. It's not legal in Texas, so you can't condone it quite yet. But not only did they do that, but then they immediately did it the next day, right? Or the school said, you need to meet with the dean immediately, and they just keep ignoring it. Someone gets into a really bad argument with their spouse, and the spouse says, if you do this again, or if you talk to me again this way, or you do fill in the blank, I'm going to leave you. And they keep doing it. What's going on with the judgment? Are they not taking it seriously? Is there an impulse control issue? But does the person have the ability to make healthy decisions, or at least to not make a situation worse, right? So I met with the dean, and I said a bunch of like really bad words, called her every name in the book. She said she was going to let me go until I called her this one word, right? So what was going on, right? Tell me about why that seemed like a good thing to do. Excuse me. So these are kind of the general components of the mental status exam. Now, the way it probably feels, and it's normal, but I want to get you to shift away from it, is I got to remember all these different things? No, it's not like a recipe, right? Where I gotta remember to go over thought content. Gotta remember decision making. Oh, there's insight and judgment, right? It's not like that. This is stuff that is gonna come very fluidly, very easily as you're talking to your client, right? You're reviewing their initial intake paperwork, right? Where they're writing down the reason for visits. They're telling you who they are, what's the date of the appointment. So you're getting a lot of this very quickly, right? So on their intake paperwork, they have their name, what is your home address, what is the date, what is your reason for visit. As they sit down and you say things like, so tell me, so-and-so, what brings you in? And they're being kind of candid with you, or they seem hesitant, right? So this is stuff that you're going to pick up on very easily. The speech and language, right? So at the end of the session, imagine I'm there and I say, so how did they communicate with you? And I say, like, regular. When everything is regular or normal or common or to be expected, or the way you expected it, then this is very easy. It's just the stuff that's out of the ordinary that we are kind of putting a check by to circle back to. Excuse me. So another part of your initial intake is their history, and this is kind of at a minimum what you would be collecting. Who are they? What is the presenting problem? What brings you in today? What's the reason for the appointment? How long? That's the history. How long has this been a problem? When did it first show up? When were you first diagnosed? When did family members say that they thought there was a problem? Was there a time when it wasn't a problem? Tell me about your family, and then of course getting the history of them, right? Did any of your family members have X, Y, and Z? Did you ever have family members with a history of bipolar, addiction, depression, abuse, etc.? And on top of that, asking questions about what is your relationship like with those family members, right? So very standard counseling questions, bordering on like stereotypical questions, but your father or father figure, and what is your relationship like with them? What's your relationship like with your mother? What's your relationship like with your siblings? Your relationship status, right? And what is that like? Development, right? So for kids, you're definitely asking developmental questions, such as at what age did they start walking, talking? Were they able to go to the bathroom on their own, sleep through the night, get dressed, things like that? Did they reach those milestones? Were they able to make friendships with their same age peers? You're asking about their education. And again, with kids, you'd be asking, what grade are they in? What are their grades like? For adults, you might be asking, what's your highest level of education? And then you're asking follow-up questions. So someone who went through high school, and you say, what was high school like? Did you enjoy your high school experience? Why or why not? Same for college. When somebody says, I've had some college, or I didn't finish high school, asking those questions such as why, right? In a non-judgmental way, of course, there might be very valid reasons, such as I had to stop to get a job to support my family, or I fell in with the wrong crowd, or who knows. Work, right? So tell me about your job. Do you like it? What do you do? Is it difficult? I want to go back for a second. With relationships, not just romantic either. It can also be, do you have friends? Do you have a best friend? Do you have someone that you can confide in if you needed to? Medical history, right? Because we know that some mental health concerns can co-occur or even become comorbid with medical conditions. We'd ask about prescription, right? Medications of note. You might also include things like, are you on any kind of prescribed diet? Substance use, right? So, drinking, drugging, prescription medication misuse, right? So maybe it is a prescription medication that they don't have a prescription for, such as Xanax, or using Strattera for off-label use, steroids, etc. And previous counseling. Very important question, very easy to forget about. But have you ever been to counseling before? What for? How did it work out? What worked? What didn't? Why did you stop going? And it could be things like the problem alleviated. I moved. I ran out of insurance. My counselor moved. Whatever it might be. But also figuring out what was the benefit for them for going to counseling, what worked, and if there was something that didn't work, because it is very common for clients to kind of counselor shop and say, well, I felt like that counselor just kept giving me forms. They just had a form for everything. They just kept giving me stuff. This counselor just kept saying, tell me more. I really like this one counselor because he kept pushing me and he told me that I was wrong. And then I kind of reflected and was like, I don't like that, but he's right. So figuring out what worked and what didn't, so that way we can try and keep doing what worked and avoid, if appropriate, what didn't. That's going to do it for this one. Check out the article in the different forms and you'll see that this is not as difficult. Even though there's lots of moving pieces, it's not difficult to keep track of them. You have a form. At the end of your session, you're making this in your note. The next video, we go over notes, and that's where you're saying things like, nothing notable if everything is fine, and then if someone has, they have word salad, you're going to say, when asked certain questions, the client would say random words. Client has thought about suicide but does not have a plan, so on and so forth, right? So you're having a normal session, and then upon reflection, what do you put in your notes to follow up with them with later? Check out the article and the templates to get an idea. You can also Google or make your own. And so have some fun with it. I hope everyone's well, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.